Ramps on the Moon. Inside Stories by Ramps on the Moon. Ramps on the Moon aims to enrich the stories we tell and the way we tell them by normalising the presence of disabled and deaf people across mainstream theatre. Inside Stories is a series of unedited snippets from conversations between people who have been involved in some way with Ramps on the Moon. The following audio is a snippet from one of these conversations. Laura Guthrie and Ben Wilson.
One of the things as well I was going to tell you about that in terms of proudest moments, and one of the things that I'm really keen on is how the theatres represent disability through the content of the shows.
Yeah.
So that if a show has disability as part of its focus, or even just an element of the show is referencing disability in some way, that we acknowledge that and we understand the implications of it.
Yes.
And obviously we cast disabled artists where we should be casting them, certainly when it's a role.
We should.
Yeah. Well, it needs to be much broader, of course.
Yeah.
But that it's not just about the casting; it's about the content of a piece. And we've
had a really interesting conversation the other week, actually, when you weren't with us, but when the agents gathered in Sheffield, and Daisy and Kate were talking about trigger warnings on shows that have sensitive subjects.
We've done that, yeah.
Which I think is really, really interesting, and as an area that needs to. It's just how you. It seems like there's not an obvious way about how to make that work and how you put that into action, but it's such an important.
We've just started doing that, and that the reason we've started doing that is because we've got Madness of George III coming up.
Of course,
and I think I talked to you and the other agents about this. I sent you all something.
Yes.
That's the other thing I love. I'm doing something, I'm not sure about it. I can email it to you and go, give me your thoughts.
And by the
is
end
this
of the day, you've got
rubbish?
4 opinions. Yeah.
Or is this any good, or whatever? And I love that. And that was the same with the George III stuff around language, because I was really concerned that we were going to put on this play and we weren't going to acknowledge that mental health was a key element of this play. So what's been brilliant is the artistic director, who's a new artistic director, has really taken this on board amazingly. And in general, the whole Ramps ethos he's taken on amazingly, which is great. But to the point where he's supported us in producing a briefing note for all the creatives involved in the production around language and social model of disability and in particular mental health. And he took that on himself, and at the design meeting he introduced it. Allowed me to answer questions that came up from the floor on it, but he introduced it, so he was owning it.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And he's asked me to do the same on the first day of rehearsal with the cast.
Great.
Which is for me that's really
huge,
it's like, yes, you're totally understanding what we're saying. This isn't just about what you see; it's what you say and how you talk about disability in 100%. A creative sense as well as.
Which is why sorry to interrupt, the battle for representation is so important.
Yeah.
Because I sometimes think people miss the point when they talk about we've got to have disabled artists in disabled roles, which obviously we need to have that. But I think it's not just from a kind of a lack of opportunity for disabled artists point of view. It's also from these stories need to be told correctly and need to have the voices of people who have the relevant knowledge and experience and live those lives, and that lived experience need to have the chance to bring those stories to the table, those stories to the stage. And when you take that story and put it in the hands of someone who doesn't know that, doesn't have that experience, one, on an artistic level, it just loses all depth for me. As a disabled person, I don't want to go to the theatre. As someone who's registered blind, I don't want to go to the theatre and see a sighted actor with a sighted director and writer tell me how difficult life is for a blind person. That makes me want to jump out of the nearest window. But it's having the right but. As a hearing person, I'd love to go to the theatre. I love to go to the theatre and hear deaf people talking about life as a deaf person and experience, and bringing that experience to a story that might not even necessarily be about that, but brings extra depth to it. For me, that's just magic.
Yeah.
And again, it's true of all forms of diversity, isn't it? I know,
Yeah,
you know,
of course it is.
how many times have male writers tried to talk about the female experience of the
Yeah.
world, and you know, who cares about that?
Yeah.
I don't want to hear about that.
Yeah.
It's
It's funny, isn't it? Because the audiences that are attracted to those shows as well create an ambience within a theatre that you just can't. It's absolutely priceless.
Yeah.
And the same goes when, like we did the Shebeen here that went to Stratford East as well.
I remember you talking about that.
And
I
it was
gutted to miss it, yeah.
amazing that the sense of belonging within that audience and understanding, because it was a piece written by a black writer about the lives of black people in St Anne's area
Yeah.
of Nottingham at a certain given time in the 50s, 60s, and it just resonated with people.
And that
People
you can't fake
No,
that. You can't.
can't.
Yeah, you can't recreate that after the after
No.
the fact without the experience.
No.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's for me is always the central point, and why representation. It's not just in terms of onstage talent; it's offstage talent. You know, it's writers, directors,
Yeah.
producers, all of those sort of things. That's when things really come to life for me. You know, when you're in a rehearsal room and it's all of these different perspectives.
Yeah.
You know, adds so much depth to the world of the piece.
Yeah, definitely.
That's what I want. Why can't all theatre be like that? You know?
One day.
One day. Yeah.
It will be.
Yeah.
Produced by Hannah Quigley and Tammy Doncic for the New Wolsey Theatre and Ramps on the Moon. Directed and edited by Tammy Doncic. Supported using public funding by Arts Council England.